On Friday, September 7th, in the men's qualifying round of the 2018 Innsbruck World Championships on men's route B1, a bunch of climbers, notably Romain DesGranges, Sean McColl, and Adam Ondra, stepped on or didn't step on a plastic sign for Black Diamond as they were climbing the route. It's kind of up for debate whether they did or not. I don't really want to talk about the judgment of it. For those that don't know, I hope Ongle on bouldering kind of like breaks out of his bouldering shell and talks about this because he does really good videos explaining rules and stuff like that. But in general, most people seem to think that Adam, Romain, and Sean, and possibly some others, used the poster as much as each other did. But Sean and Romain got docked points for it, and they didn't move on to finals, whereas they didn't seem to dock Adam for any progress after that. He went on to finals and indeed podium. I don't want to talk too much about the judging. I think the judges are the best judge of what they saw, and I think the climbers know what they stepped on or didn't step on. And I think between them and their federations, they can figure this out for the future. And then of course for the route setters, I think the route setters will have this seared in their memory the next time they go to place signage. I'm sure they're not going to forget this. I'm sure they're going to do an even better job next time. What I mostly want to talk about is that this isn't a new thing. We have been putting obstacles like these signs in the field of play on the wall for a really long time. It's just very rare that it becomes an issue. Think of things like the signs that we're talking about, but also the little top and start and bonus tags, like these things. You can remember Rustem crimping off of these. Having routes that are just too close to each other. Bolts and anchors, that's something at Canadian Nationals here a couple of years ago, really messed up some of the scoring when some people stepped on an anchor. And of course T-nuts too, grabbing into T-nuts on volumes or possibly on the wall. There are rules against using all of these things, but just the fact that we have rules kind of shows how underdeveloped sport climbing is as a sport. We still have so little control over the walls that we use that we need to use these rules to shape how competitors use those walls rather than designing our walls so that they align with the intent of the sport, which is get from the bottom to the top using whatever's there in whatever creative way you can figure out. There shouldn't be any obstacles. There shouldn't be anything on the wall that you can't use. Whatever's on the wall should be fair game. Just climb what's there. I also want to note that for the judges, judges are fallible. Cameras are fallible too. If you've judged, you understand that you make a lot of calls where you're not 100% sure of, but you are doing your best. And even when you are giving it your full attention and you have your best intentions, you can still make mistakes, but you can also just make calls that are debatable. With the most information that you can possibly have, you're still not entirely sure, and athletes can disagree with you a lot, but you still have to kind of hold your ground and say, with my best judgment, this is what I saw. That's really difficult. I would really like it if we didn't force judges to make calls like that on extraneous things like whether or not you stepped on a sign. I'd rather judges can just focus on, the actual climbing part. Did you get to the top? Did you control? Did you use? If we could eliminate these kind of problems in the first place, they could worry about those more important things. So I kind of want to talk about getting rid of these problems, but first I just want to address like intentional and non-intentional use. For the most part, these instances that we're talking about are non-intentional, especially at the pro level. Most of these climbers, Sean McColl, Adam Ondra, Romain DesGranges, these are ultimate professionals. They understand what they're allowed to use and what they're not allowed to use. So it's very hard to think that they saw this sign on the wall and consciously said, I'm going to use this for my own gain. So intentional use is very rare, but when it does happen, it's really easy to spot. Usually involves something above the athlete that they can see in their field of vision, and it usually involves their hands. They make a conscious choice to grab onto something. My favorite example of this, although technically it was legal, was Portland Boulder Rally 2014. One of the men's problems, maybe like men's 3, but Peter Dixon had given a couple attempts on this climb and he couldn't quite figure out this area where you had a lot of hand choices, but they were all really bad hands. And there's a moment where you see him kind of like shape up he spots the top lip of the wall, which on previous problems, some of the problems finished with a top out, so you had to grab the edge and top out to officially complete it. On this particular climb, there was a marked finish hole. It was a volume, so it had a tape box around it like they do in the States, and you had to end up with both hands on this volume. He couldn't figure out this traverse kind of to the finish, so you see this moment where he pauses and he sets up, and you can see that he's looking up at the top lip, which wasn't topped out, and he ends up just reaching for it, hitting the rail, traversing across, and dropping down to the finish hold. And you know, obviously it wasn't the intent of the setters. In fact, when it happened, the whole place kind of goes quiet, and Dave Wetmore, who was one of the setters for the event, he was part of the commentary team for those couple minutes, just like really bad luck. But he owned up to it right away. You know, everyone in the crowd went quiet. There was kind of confusion, and Dave on the stream just said, you know, yeah, we messed that up. We should have taped that out. That's a good example. If you go back and look at that, I'll maybe put a link up. If you look at that, you can see the setup and the intentional movement that he used. And again, Pete was in the right. There was no tape blocking it out. Maybe it had been mentioned in the technical briefing, but I'm pretty sure they gave him the score. So intentional use looks intentional. You can generally spot it. It's hard to, you know, unintentionally grab a quick draw or grab an unfinished edge. If you're using your hands, you're probably aware of where your hands are going and what they're about to use. But again, most of our cases are unintentional, and that usually means out of your sight line, so kind of below you, which usually means we're going to be talking about your feet, so smears and flagging. Or just throwing around blind corners and hitting volumes and maybe jamming your finger inside a T-nut. But anyway, these are the most common issues. There's no intent to break the rule, and there's generally no awareness of the obstacle until it happens. And my favorite example of this is Toronto 2015 Bouldering World Cup. In the final, I think it was women's number 1. Right out the gate, I think Melissa Leneve was the first climber, and you kind of go up this stemmy corner, kind of like an inside book. And then you have to traverse out to the right. You get your hands on the finish, but you're a little out of balance, so you kind of swing your legs out around the corner of a prow. And you can see how happy the climbers are to get both hands on the finish. But as that foot goes around the corner to establish balance so that they can control the finish, you see a moment of dread as they realize they've just stepped on something, which happens to be around the corner on the other side of black tape, and they're stepping on a hold from another route. Completely unintentional, and in preview, they probably could have seen that, but it's just not something you're thinking about in that moment. So, these accidents, completely unintentional, but they can ruin the event for the climber completely. And it can ruin the event for spectators as well. I don't remember who won Meiringen 2017. I just remember that event as the event where there was the whole streaming debacle where we thought we weren't going to get a free live stream for it. So I don't remember the results of that. I don't remember who won the Portland Boulder Rally 2014. I just remember Pete going for the top lip. So as route setters or as organizers, we really want to avoid these kind of things because it can, you know, just like sully the event for everyone, and it can make it, you know, memorable, but in the worst possible way, and it can make you look bad as an organizer or as a route setter. So it's worth trying to avoid these things. So let's talk about some of these problems and just very quickly some ways that you know, most likely you're like me, you work for a gym, you're not an IFSC setter. They can figure it out on their own. But for us, what kind of stuff can we be doing to kind of eliminate some of these problems or to start thinking about it so that maybe people can come up with new solutions for the future? And these are different for everyone. The concerns of a World Cup setter are very different from you at your local gym setting for, you know, a USAC local with hundreds of kids, and it's a, you know, a different format, older walls. You probably have less space. And most of these issues are space related, just putting things too close together. But yeah, let's talk about advertising first of all. If you have advertising, and it sucks because, you know, the route setters aren't the ones in charge of printing signage. The route setters are given signage that they then have to hang up. So if you have to deal with physical signage, if it has to be rigid, like the plastic signs used at this World Cup, put them far away from the climb. And I understand that the point of advertising is for it to be seen. And if you have a fairly tight camera angle, you might not see signs if they're too far away, but there's no reason to not put the signs 8 or 10 feet out of the line of the climb to make sure that they're absolutely not going to be used no matter what beta the climbers use. If they have to be close to the wall, we need to talk about different ways to display stuff. If you're at a higher level event and you've got kind of darkened walls and spotlights, you should just be using projection. You should just have a gobo with your sponsor's logo projected over the climb. So there's no physical object at all, and it still looks really cool. It gets the point across. Or we should be looking at printing it or using adhesive or vinyl to put it right onto volumes. If you got dual text volumes, those are a perfect place to stick on a logo for somebody. If you have to, if you have the ability to like really control the wall, paint the logos on the wall itself, get it out of the way. And I understand that from event to event, you may have different sponsors. So Waltopia sponsors your event one time and then Entreprise sponsors it the next year. You can't have a Waltopia logo on that wall, but we should be thinking really hard about getting rid of these obstacles so that you don't completely ruin the event. Black Diamond in this case, I know not many people have been mentioning that it's a Black Diamond sign, but like, you know, it just really sucks that it has to be your logo that somebody stepped on and ruined the event for two of the best lead climbers that we've ever had in the sport, and now they're eliminated from the World Championships. Start and top tags. So these are kind of, this is from a couple years ago, and these are printed on like a foam core, and it's only a few millimeters wide, but it is crimpable, as Rustum showed. Now, I thought that they had switched for the IFSC to like stickers for these, and I don't know why I thought that, because I looked through a couple World Cups and I couldn't see evidence that they were actually printed on different material. Looking at the most recent one, Munich 2018, it looked like they made them thinner. It might just be like a very thin plastic that then gets screwed to the wall, so it might support less weight. But we should be moving away from solid objects as much as possible. So if we can get away with stickers, that's awesome. But we use tape for everything. And for the IFSC, I would really like to see them using a 2-inch or a 4-inch custom printed gaffer tape. It's already in the lexicon of stuff that we use in route setting. And especially if you do a custom 4-inch tape, you can put on this logo, right? You can put these words on there. You can put start, you can put finish, you can put the logo for the event, and you can use that as your start hashes. It'll still be visible from a camera, and it doesn't add an object to the wall that isn't already there. For T-nuts, and I think T-nuts usually concern of like youth events, right? Where you're dealing with Ds, maybe Cs, but like Ds and Es and younger, where they can jam an entire finger into a T-nut. It's kind of like hard to solve that issue for every single T-nut on a wall. But for adults, the issue is usually with volumes, where there may be a T-nut that's just too close to the grippable edge. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen route setters using martini head bolts, especially on wooden volumes. Just crank in martini head bolts until they lie flush with the surface of the volume. Makes it much harder to grip. There's really nothing there. And I saw one guy, and this kind of seemed really difficult, but he had the EP walks. So those gray, round, like, you know, just a bit of an arc of a sphere volumes. They're really slick, and they've only got, I think, like 4 or 5 T-nuts on them. And what he did is he took short bolts, and before he put the volume on the wall, he took the bolt and threaded it from the back of the volume until the butt of the bolt was flush with the surface of the volume. So if you're climbing it, there's just the end of a bolt sticking there, flush. It's not going to hurt you. You're not going to touch it, but it stops you from getting any grip into the actual T-nut. So that was a really cool kind of idea. Maybe there's a way to jam tape in there, tape over it, use earplugs. It's not, you know, super bomb proof, but whatever we can do, especially if you're having somebody throw around a corner or make a reach, especially if the volume is super bad, if that's the crux move and you know that people are going to be falling there, and if you've got a camera on it, and some people have fingers on the T-nuts and some don't, that's like a huge judging issue. So figure out a way to make the T-nuts as useless as possible, and then just say they can use whatever's there, and the judges don't have to worry about like, oh, did they or didn't they? It just saves you a lot of work. And then lastly, quick draws. And this is the one that drives me crazy, because if you look at the championships that just finished up yesterday, the wall is littered with hangers. It's littered with not quick draws, but the hangers, the bolts all over the wall. and they're very easy to step on. They're very high profile. You can easily put a lot of weight on those and really propel off them. And that's an issue for walls everywhere. At least take off the quick draw, obviously, if you can. That's fairly easy to remove. But removing the hanger itself is usually pretty difficult. At an event wall or at your home gym, it usually involves somebody going to the back of the wall, unbolting all of these things, and when the event is done, you got to put them back up, and that is probably a prohibitive endeavor. You don't want to have to do that for every event you host, and I can totally understand that. So we should be figuring out how to, kind of cover these things up. And so that might just be black taping the hell out of them. Not just a box around it, but covering the thing with black tape until you've built kind of like I don't even know what you would call it. I'm just kind of imagining those insects that build like webs in trees where you've just like completely covered something in black tape so it becomes almost a tent of black tape and a lot harder to step on. But I'd really like to see somebody that's, involved in product development or has like a background in like injection molding for plastic or something. I'd love to see something the size of a tea saucer that just can snap on and cap over a tea nut, make it in the color of every, standard Walltopia color, make it fit the typical hangers and make it fit those new integrated Walltopia hangers that we saw on the Innsbruck wall. Just something that the root setters can take and slap on the wall. It snaps into the hanger, and then it's easily removable with like a screwdriver to pry it off or something. Something that covers the bolt but is a slick surface and a fairly slick angle so that if you do step on it, you're not really getting much more traction than you would if you were just smearing into the wall. It'll get rid of that issue. We can agree that, okay, you might get a little bit of help on it, but we say it's open to everyone. So if you want to step on it, go for it. It's not a huge deal. And it eliminates that entire danger of people stepping on hangers, which again, a couple years ago in Canada would have been really nice because it messed some people up. And that was a real bummer for their year. And lastly is just using smart people in your staff. I think an issue that probably came up at Innsbruck is that the root setters have a lot of work on their plate, and generally their process will be setting the wall and then forerunning it and tweaking and then adding signage later on. And so I know my friend Malik kind of showed some video from the preview. I don't know where he got that, but in the preview video, the posters weren't on the wall. And in the preview, it was clear that the preview climber was flagging out to that area. If those posters had been up earlier, it would have been shown to, be careful of this. You're going to want to flag near it. But if just somewhere along the line, there could have been somebody who didn't have the same pressure on them as the root setters to help address these kind of issues, or worry about the posters so that the root setters don't have to, worry about the little things so that the root setters can, put their focus into separating really difficult fields and have another guy that can be completely involved with kind of advocating for the athlete and taking care of the things that the root setters shouldn't have to focus on. I'm really lucky where I have a root setting background, but nowadays I mostly do management stuff and just other, stuff around the gym. And so when my local gym is hosting a competition, I can come in and I can take care of pulling down all of the quick draws for the setters. For a boulder event, I can take care of the taping. I can make sure that the benches and things are arranged so that the seating for isolation is taken care of. If you've got somebody with that skill set of having been a root setter and understanding how a competition works, drag those people in so that you as the root setter have less stuff to worry about. You can focus on building really excellent climbs, and you can have somebody else who has the same experience but can say, oh hey, you're gonna have to put the signage up. I'll make sure it's in a spot that's not gonna bother the climbers. I'll make sure that the tape is in a good spot. None of this will be a last minute thing for you. You just focus on setting the best routes of your life, and I'll worry about the extra stuff so that you don't get half the attention paid to these issues. I'm sure the signage wasn't something that they were thinking too much about because they were setting for a world championship and the crew is pretty small, and these are some of the most important routes that they've ever set in their life. And somebody hands you some advertising, you're probably not going to care that much, especially when it's, the night before the event possibly. So give it to somebody else that can focus on it fully. Let the root setters do their job. And make sure that the routes are excellent and that there's no obstacles in the way. So long and short of it, let's pay a little more attention to the things that are on the wall that don't have to be there. Let's try and eliminate those things or develop new products so that we don't have to worry about that stuff. If you are the person that ends up building caps for the hangers on the wall so that people can climb without bolt hangers, if that gets really successful, write me like a check for $20 or something. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of the World Championships. I know the lead portion was actually a lot of fun. I was really impressed with the broadcast for it. Shout out to, I guess it was the Austrian TV company that ran it. I'm not 100% sure, but really excellent. And I hope that the climbing through the speed and the paraclimbing and the bouldering and the combined is so great that we forget about this incident with Sean and Romain and Adam. But I know that those athletes won't forget about it. It's a real shame that they couldn't show their all in finals, because we know that they would deserve to. So let's try and make sure that this kind of issue doesn't come up again.